I fell a little bit in love with this car from the moment I heard it start up. This is a brand new Shelby Cobra, the CSX10000. And what's more, we got it here in Britain, even before America.
The question is, does this modern interpretation deserve to wear that badge? If this film supers your snake, then do please think about joining the Hagerty Drivers Club. You get an award-winning magazine and myriad other benefits. To find out more, just click on the link below.
This has been very much inspired by the trend for resto mods, but there's no resto in here. It's much more in the line of the MST not Ford Escort, except with this, you can call it by its proper name, the Shelby Cobra, because it's been licensed by them.
As a very quick, broad recap, original Cobras were produced from 1961 to 1968. The chassis were made in England, with the Ford V8s then either fitted in America for the Shelby Cobras or in Surrey for the AC Cobras. Just shy of 1,000 were produced in total. And everything since the 60s? Well, we've had continuations and replicas, ACs and Shelbys, counterfeit and kosher, and you could argue that they have all been new, really. As for official, well, the wrangling between AC and Shelby, Britain and America has at times felt like the biggest disagreement since Cornwallis and Washington got into a bit of a scuffle. In recent years, only the continuation CSX10000 cars have been allowed to be called Shelby Cobras and appear on the Shelby Register. They are meant to faithfully mimic the originals: carbs, 15-inch wheels, heavy steering, the whole 9 yards. So, they are classic, 60s throwbacks, even if they are freshly minted. Which is why this is a big deal, because this CSX10000, sold exclusively by the Clive Sutton car dealership in London, isn't just new, it's modern. At least in parts. The car is made by Superformance. The body's actually come over from South Africa. This is the glass fibre version, but you can get an aluminium body as well. And under here is a box section ladder frame chassis with crumple zones front and rear, based on Superformance's Mark III. What's confusing is that this is the same chassis and body as you'll find on the classic CSX10000 continuation cars. Where it starts getting bang up to date, however, is with the engine.
We've got the 5-litre Coyote V8 from Ford. Again, we've got a Ford badge on this, and it sounds glorious. I've driven a few cars with this Coyote engine, but none of them have sounded as good as this. We've got the stock 460 brake horsepower, 420 pounds-feet of torque, which is much more than you'd really want to get out of a 289 original. You can get one of these with a supercharger and 700 brake horsepower. Why you'd want that, I don't know, unless you love the sound of a supercharger. This has got more than enough power. Given they reckon this weighs about 2,400 pounds, so what's that? A little over 1,000 kilos?
There is also power steering, LED headlights, larger 18-inch wheels, bigger brakes, a Tremec 6-speed gearbox, and that's about it actually. The interior is very authentic, slightly interesting ergonomics and all, because my feet are all the way skewed across there. We've also got the gear lever, which originally in Ford would have been the other way around, so you sort of did that, but in here, obviously, if it's straight up, you'd have sort of T-Rex arms, so it makes more sense for it to be bent forwards like that. And the dials, which show that sort of British-American connection, because we've got Smiths and Lucas in here. Fuel gauge isn't really working. Maybe it's just scared. This sounds like it drinks fuel in the sort of way that you offer it a glass of something and it snatches the bottle out of your hand. The nice thing is you don't have to be in the high revs to enjoy this. Just
model along like this is fun. Grind the throttle. But if you do, wow, it's fast. It's an engine though with so much character. You've got a bit of Harley Davidson in there, you've got a bit of motorboat in there. There's obviously that journalistic cliche of rolling thunder. But in this, it's entirely appropriate. This is the real deal that even on a day like this, makes you look for the big black cumulonimbus.
The sound then is very authentic. Bigger 18-inch wheels aside, the look is very authentic too. In fact, I very much doubt the vast majority of people would think this was anything other than a classic car. That's all well and good, but I want to know what a real traditionalist will feel about this car. Does it cut the mustard? Luckily, I know just the man, and we don't have to go all the way to America to find him. Tucked away in a barn in a tiny village in Middle England is Alan Faulkner's workshop. I've known him for over a decade, and every time I pop in, he always has something interesting, usually with a Shelby badge on it.
Okay, this one is a 1968 Shelby GT500 KR, King of the Road, with the 428 Cobra Jet, C6 automatic. This one's got a stroked engine, so we opened it out to 8 litres, just under 500 foot-pounds of torque and about 470 horsepower. So it's turned into a torque monster because of the stroke, basically. It's in lime gold with a black interior, and it's had a full rebuild. Tried to save as much of the original car as we could to keep it as correct as we can, you know, and it's put back to original sort of specification.
Alan started in the military aircraft industry, moved to Aston Martin as a design and development engineer, and then left to turn his love for American cars into his full-time job. Just in case anyone doubts you should have looked at the tattoo.
Oh God, yes. Very lucky being involved with them, I think. Real early Cobras, and these particularly. With Carol, I think everything. I owe my complete enthusiasm and hobby and work to Carol Shelby and the team that produced it, all the lads, you know.
So tell us a little bit about this GT350.
Okay, 67, early production Shelby GT350. So you've got, it's in dark moss green, little 289 hypo engine, most famous the 289, 4-speed manual and 3.5 limited slip diff. So exactly what you'd have expected on one of these early cars. Nice features, it's a steel wheel and hubcap car, and it has the really desirable inboard lights.
I was going to say, I don't think I've seen those.
Yeah, inboards so and outboards, yeah, they're just lovely.
But enough of Mustangs, time for the Alan verdict on the new Cobra.
Okay.
What do you think? Are you horrified?
No, not at all. There are some really nice details that I particularly like about it. I like the diamond quilting on the interior. They've gone for the old-fashioned locks. They've got the riveted bonnet and the riveted scoop. They've got the side pipes, which are a little bit of an anachronism in some respects, and the bigger diameter wheels, because we were running, you know, most of the cars ran 15-inch wheels, but then tyres are becoming a problem. So this has got to be seen as a modern version.
And if I turned up to an owners meeting in this, I wouldn't get laughed out of the...
Well, it's very difficult now, because I think that would be unfair to do that, because there are so many recognised high quality, what you would class as replicas.
Yeah.
Jerry Hawkins makes the Hawk. Yeah. There's Superformance own vehicle, which this was partially fabricated. There are very good people, Factory 5 in America, they make some very nice cars, and each of them offers something slightly different, but the core of the car is still there. It's still fundamentally Carroll and Shelby American's car, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just we're a long way away from 66 and 65 and 7 when they were putting these cars together.
The more I've driven this, the more I think, actually, yeah, the fact that it's recognised by the Shelby Register does mean something.
For me, it means everything. A North American car, certainly for most of the Cobra's life, was Shelby American and Carroll. If it was in Europe, it was an AC version because AC built the right-hand drives, and we knew AC cars was directly linked, and they built the cars. The Mark IV Cobras are a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
Beautifully handmade English cars, developing off the back of the originals, you know, because that's what it is. Once they stopped making them, it's all sort of been evolved afterwards, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, for me, having a Shelby American car is wonderful.
The more I've looked into it, there's this obviously British and American sort of, and it feels like it's so partisan, isn't it? Everybody wants to claim that 51% of what it is, and whether it's not. But
it's so difficult because all the parties put in they've put something into the pot. They have created something, they've raced it, they've driven it, they've modified it, but you still come down to the fact it's Carroll's idea, and Carroll teamed up with the guys at AC's when they lost the Bristol engine and needed a V8, or they needed another engine, and they've originally put the little 260 in it, and then it starts to get the 289 and it starts to get legs. They go racing because Carroll couldn't race anymore because of his heart.
it's his name, isn't it?
It's Carroll's name. I know the AC enthusiasts go, oh, well, we did this, and there's no disputing AC's had a big part in this car. You couldn't do one without the other. But somebody still came to the table originally and went, I've got a really good idea for a sports car, you know. That's my view of it. And some people won't like it, but thank you, Carroll.
It's the right, it's the right engine, isn't it?
It's got a proper
the lineage.
V8. Yes. The nice thing about it is a modern engine like this will be fundamentally very efficient, but light. Because if you have an earlier version of the car with the big 420/18 or the 427, they're pretty heavy, which makes the weight biasing forwards in the car, and Cobras, with the best will in the world, can be a little tricky to drive, particularly when it's damp. If you get the smaller engine version, they tend to even the weight distribution up, which makes them just a little bit more gentle on the driver. When I drive a big block, if you're driving it, shall we say, enthusiastically, you are always aware of what's your tyre temperature like, what are the road surfaces like, because it will bite you, and I've had one bite me a couple of times. I was okay. The heart, I aged 5 years, but you know, but
it's ironic that Carroll gave up racing because he had heart problems and then created a car like this.
Which causes heart problems.
Exactly.
And that, I think, gets to the heart of the appeal of this new modernised Cobra, because its real attraction and point of differentiation is just how easy it is to drive.
At times I've wondered with this car whether you're missing out on some of the authenticity, the power assisted steering. Is it too light? But of course that's what makes this car attractive. This is what, as Alan says, is going to attract a new audience, the ease with which you can drive this. It's got a huge amount of grip for a start, and when you do really start to lean on it in the corners, there's not a lot of feel from the front end, and you can just feel the rear start to collapse a little bit. It's much better to get it settled, turn in early, and then use the throttle and just smear it through the corner, and then it's a lovely sort of old school feeling still.
The tyres, by the way, are wide 275 sections at the front and positively monstrous 335 sections at the rear. So it's no wonder it feels secure. Yet it's also demanding thanks to power assistance.
The steering makes it an absolute doddle at low speed. The brakes have been upgraded to 4-pot Wilwood items. If you really lean on them there's still no ABS, so you do have to bear that in mind. Otherwise, they give you confidence. Big bumps are definitely not this car's friend. You want a smooth road like this. Even then you get certain sort of clunks and squeaks in here. This gearbox, again, the gear lever as I mentioned, it looks a little strange but is nice and easy to use. Yes, having your feet canted over like that after about half an hour to an hour, if you're tall like me, you start feeling a bit uncomfortable, but to just drive down the road, it's very easy.
I think overall its ethos can be summed up as a muscle car that doesn't require muscle to drive.
Objectively, this is quite a hard car to justify in many ways for the price of £195,000 here in the UK. Glass fibre body, great engine. The finishing on this, the attention to detail, doesn't feel like it's up to the standard of other things like the Eagles or Singers or anything like that. It's probably lacking that last 10%. So objectively, it's perhaps hard to justify the price in a way. It feels like you're paying a lot to have that name. But subjectively, the feel-good factor in this is off the charts.
And not just for the driver. I think this made more people smile wherever I went than any other car I've driven in the past 12 months. Did any of them really care about whether this was new or old, classic or continuation, real or replica, AC or Shelby? I doubt it. Sometimes we can attach a lot of weight to names when really we should just keep it light. This Cobra is just a joyous feast for the eyes and ears.